Sam Howell, Drake Maye, they're not in Chapel Hill anymore to cover up the sins of the Tar Heels. Something's got to give.
This is Tyler Hansbrough, and you're listening to Locked On Tar Heels.
You are Locked On Tar Heels, your daily podcast on the UNC Tar Heels. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hey there, folks. What's up? It's Friday, October 18th, 2024. Welcome into the Locked On Tar Heels podcast, the only daily North Carolina show out there. I'm your host, Isaac Shade, and you're joining me at the place to get your Tar Heels content every single day. It's all part of the Locked On Podcast Network. Thanks for making us your first listen or watch, and I want to give a special welcome to our everydayers, all the Locked On Tar Heels Discord members, and of course, our great Locked On Tar Heels insiders as well. Let's get right into it. Welcome in. This episode's brought to you by FanDuel. Place your first $5 bet, and you'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed. Visit FanDuel.com to get started. Got a special guest joining us today. It's Mr. Max Chadwick from PFF. We talked a couple months ago in the lead up to the draft, and Max is back here with us today. And unfortunately, Drake Maye is no longer a Tar Heel, and that's sad. So we're going to have to get into that, along with lots of other football talk, the Bryson Nesbitt injury, where things are at with Mack Brown, and Max's thoughts on that. So want to make sure that you know that PFF has got you covered all season long with the best data, tools, and analysis in the game. Sign up for PFF Plus today to unlock all their famous player grades and premium stats, push to the playoffs in your fantasy league with in-season tools and award-winning rankings from fantasy expert Nathan Janke. And stay connected to the next generation of talent with the best NFL draft coverage on the planet. No matter what you're looking for, PFF Plus has what you need to make the winning decisions all season long. Sign up for PFF Plus today for less than $10 a month. Max, I probably need to do that. I'm on like a 3-game skid in my fantasy league, kind of like the Tar Heels in their 4-game skid. So I probably need to shell out some of that PFF money and get on the good side of it. Look, welcome in, Max. We're so glad you're here. Let's just get right in to the quarterback of it all. Carolina has essentially been buoyed in Mack Brown 2.0 by 3 years of Sam Howell and 2 years of Drake Maye. When you and I talked back in the spring, we looked at like, man, we don't know what this is going to be now that neither of those guys are under center. 3 quarterbacks later, from Max Johnson's unfortunate season-ending injury to start the year, to Connor Harrell not working out, and now Jacoby Criswell, who sprang back to Carolina, a little boomerang from Arkansas, is the starting quarterback. And Drake Maye, oh, by the way, is off making his first start in the NFL for the Pats last weekend, throwing 3 touchdowns. A very painful reminder of what Carolina is missing. So, Max, in your opinion, how much of Carolina's struggles this season, the 4-game losing streak that they're on, are tied to not having an upper echelon quarterback manning the way?
I think a good amount, because obviously it's the most important position on the field, and they just don't have a good one right now. I mean, Jacoby Criswell has played okay this year. It hasn't been terrible, but also hasn't been great either. It just sucks that Max Johnson went down with an injury, because I like Max Johnson. I thought he showed some good things both at LSU and at Texas A&M. And I thought he was a guy that could become a pretty above average quarterback, right? And that's what you're kind of hoping for Carolina. And when he goes down with the injury, you're left scrambling right after that. And, you know, hopefully they get it back next year. He's already announced that he wants to come back for another year, so he might be the starter in 2025. But yeah, that was a guy that you really were hoping that would be there for them. But I think they have bigger issues. They have other issues besides, you know, just Max Johnson. Besides just Max Johnson going down, just the quarterback position in general. I mean, the receiving grade is 96th in the country. Haven't been too great there. They have issues all over the place defensively, specifically in pass defense. You know, the pass rush hasn't all the way been there. The coverage unit hasn't really been great either. They're about average in run defense too. So defensively, they're 100th in defensive grade this year as well. So it's not like it's a really good team around and it's just the quarterback that's really messing up. There's a lot that's going wrong for this Carolina team, unfortunately, right now. And that's why you're seeing them struggle so much. I mean, that James Madison game looked like a basketball score, honestly, with how bad the defense is playing in that game. So, yeah, I think it's definitely a quarterback problem there, but it's not the biggest. It's not the only issue in Carolina right now. There are certainly big issues on both sides of the ball, specifically defensively, that they got to clean up as well.
Well, let's get into some of those specifics there, Max, because you identified the issues with wide receiver. For example, yes, you had Sam Howell. Yes, you had Drake Maye, but they had the opportunity to throw to a guy like, Josh Downs, and last year, Devontae Walker. With all due respect to this year's core, They just don't have that. And probably the most talented receiver who is a tight end is Bryson Nesbitt, who Carolina just announced this week is done indefinitely. I wouldn't be surprised if it's the rest of the season with a wrist injury, a break suffered last week in the game. And so it's the combination of Criswell has the arm. I don't know that he always has the touch, right? There's quite a few overthrows, for example, but the receivers are not helping him out as well. So how was that combination not going well for the Tar Heels?
It's bad combo, right? You have a quarterback that you weren't hoping to start in the first place and even had as your third stringer entering the year. And then you also receiving core that can't really elevate him too much either, right? So it's a bad combo for sure to have on that. So yeah, like I said, Bryson Nesbitt was their only guy that really, scared defenses a little bit, and now he's gone for maybe the entire season. So now you're really, really, that passing game could really be hurting. And then also they're 96th in pass blocking grade this year. I mean, outside of Willie Lampkin, that offensive line has really struggled in my opinion. So yeah, I think that they have issues in that receiving core. They have issues at quarterback, and that just doesn't make for a good passing game when you have issues at both of those, right? That makes up the entire passing game. And also, if you don't have protection either for your quarterback to stand back there and find open receivers, that's also going to present an issue too, right? So really nothing in that passing game is going right for North Carolina right now. And it's kind of been the Omarion Hampton show like we thought it could be going into the year, but now even more so with all the injuries, Omarion Hampton is going to get a lot of carries over the rest of the season.
And you would expect, one of my big hopes for the year was that because of the Omarion Hampton of it all, despite not having the same level quarterback and the same level receiving core, that would allow some complementary football to happen because of all the attention paid to Hampton. The problem is, until Carolina proves that they can hit through the passing game over and over and over again, I'm just going to load the box all day long. I'm not even a football smarty, but I could play DC against the Tar Heels and just say, hey, let's bring everybody up until Jacoby Criswell beats us over our heads. And Carolina hasn't proven capable of doing that. Let's talk about, though, how good Omarion Hampton is. Look, Ashton Jeanty, this dude is an absolute beast at Boise State. I mean, my goodness. I think I saw the other day, Max, it might have come out even from you guys, that his yards after contact would be third in the nation amongst all running backs. It's just ridiculous. But obviously, we're talking Omarion Hampton. What makes him such a special running back?
It's a lot what Ashton Jeanty brings to the table as well as tackle breaking ability, right? Because North Carolina's offensive line, run blocking wise, has not been terrific either, right? Right now, actually, they've been a lot better this year, but even last year, they weren't great in run blocking grade. They're 22nd this year, so it's actually been really, really good. And like I said, Willie Lampkin, we actually have a midseason All-American article and midseason All-American team dropping very, very soon. Actually, maybe even on Friday, I believe, both the video and the article drops. Willie Lampkin's our first team right guard because he has been that good for North Carolina this year. He's been an excellent, excellent offensive guard for them. But Hampton last year didn't have a great offensive line, and he still produced elite numbers. This year is a lot better in terms of run blocking, but he is still a superstar running back, right? He's a guy that is producing a lot after contact. He's breaking tackles. He's like a bowling ball. He also is a guy that can make you miss in space as well. He's a really, really impressive player, and the fact that he's doing it on 157 carries so far this year, that's the most among any running back in the country. He's obviously – this could be a problem for him in terms of the NFL draft when they look at how much mileage he has on him. But in terms of college, he is really performing at a very, very high level, even with the amount of carries and many hits he's taking right now. He's third in rushing yards this year behind Ashton Jeanty and Caleb Johnson. He's second in yards after contact, only behind Ashton Jeanty as well. He's been really, really good, and he's right now sixth in broken tackles this year too. So Omarion Hampton, it's a volume stat for sure. He has had a high volume of carries, but he's also producing on those volume of carries and doesn't have a fumble yet this year either. And he's averaging nearly 6 yards per carry and 4.5 yards after contact per carry on even a high volume of carries too. So really impressive to see how he's a guy that can literally carry this offense. He's going to have to carry this offense probably the rest of the year too.
Yeah. And another wrinkle in it, another variable is that not only is Carolina missing the air attack they had with Drake Maye, they're missing the effect of Drake Maye's legs that other teams had to account for on the ground as well. Obviously, Carolina doesn't have that with Jacoby Criswell. So Max mentioned the weaknesses on the defensive side of the football to another place where a key injury has stunted North Carolina's capability this season. Jeff Collins, first-year DC, coming in after taking a gap year, like a lot of people do after high school before college. We'll get to that side of the football and much more coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about Hims. Guys, you ever feel like you need a little boost in the bedroom? Well, it's time to stop worrying about your performance and get Hims so you can feel confident knowing that everything's going to be just fine when you're in the mood. Hims is changing men's healthcare by providing you with access to affordable sexual health treatments from the comfort of your couch. The process is 100% online, so there's no need for uncomfortable doctor's visits. Just answer a series of questions on their site, and a medical provider will determine the right treatment option. If prescribed, your medication ships directly to you in discreet packaging for free. No insurance is needed, and one low price covers everything. With hundreds of thousands of trusted subscribers, Hims can help you find the ED option that works for you. So start your free online visit today at hims.com/locked on. That's HIMS.com/locked on for your personalized ED treatment options. The products mentioned are chewable compound products which are not approved by or verified for safety or effectiveness by the FDA. Prescriptions require an online consultation with a healthcare provider who will determine if appropriate. Restrictions apply. See website for details and important safety information. Subscription required. Price varies based on product and subscription plan. Some hopeful promise for North Carolina's defense this year coming into the season. Coach Chizik out the door after a couple years back in the defensive coordinator role. And in comes Jeff Collins, who had previously been Georgia Tech's coach, where he hadn't been able to win more than 3 games a year. And understandably so, the portal wasn't a thing yet. You're trying to switch from Paul Johnson's triple option kind of team makeup into what you had. I get it. But Coach Collins takes a year off, just sits in his man cave, studies and studies and studies. And now he comes to Carolina to be the DC. There's a lot of hope around Carolina. Power Eccles kind of takes over the main dude in the linebacking core as Cedric Gray is off. Mari Campbell is now his partner. But you're feeling super confident because you got Kaimon Rucker there to help steady things on the edge, one of the best edge rushers in the country. Unfortunately, he has missed the vast majority of the season. Max Chadwick, yet another injury, but when the depth's not there, it's an issue.
Yeah, exactly. And, Dawn and I even broke this down in our preview of North Carolina heading into the season. We're saying, hey, this team looks very top heavy, right? They have some superstars on this team. Don't get me wrong. They have Omarion Hampton. They got Kaimon Rucker, Bryson Nesbitt as well. Willie Lampkin at offensive guard, I would classify as a superstar, especially now after how good he's been this year. And Power Eccles, like you said. But if any and all of those guys get hurt, what are they going to do, right? There's a lot of teams that can sustain injuries to star players because they have the depth behind them. We didn't really see that depth in North Carolina. And now you're seeing, obviously, the injury to Max Johnson is big. And anytime any team loses their starting quarterback for the entire season, that's massive. But they're starting to see like Nesbitt getting hurt, Rucker getting hurt. And Rucker, especially, like you lose Kaimon Rucker, the defense is falling flat right now, especially in pass rushing, which is Kaimon Rucker's really specialty, is how good he is as a pass rusher and as a run defender too. But pass rushing wise, they're like 97th in the country in pass rushing grade this year. So they needed him back, and it's good that he is back healthy now. And that pass rush grade, I'd expect to go up a lot with him there. But like I said before, they're so dependent on their stars. They're one of the most dependent teams in the country on their stars that if injuries do occur to them, where do they go from there? And as we've seen so far this year, it isn't so pretty so far.
Yes, injuries, not if, but it turned out that it's when, because it seems like they've been happening to all those stars, as you mentioned, Max. And you look around and there's a couple hopeful things. You got Elijah Huzzy on the outside, who's able to play his more natural position this year, thanks to fewer injuries in the secondary, had a punt return touchdown last week. And that's the thing, Max, that I want to get to next is Carolina 2 weeks ago against Duke had a pick 6 that's coming from two sports star Caleb Kost, who actually also plays for the Diamond Heels, and then Huzzy's punt return touchdown. But even those big plays have not been enough to flip the script for Carolina. Often you think about those big game-changing moments, doing what you need to do to scratch out or eke out a win, and yet Carolina just has not been able to hold on to it. In your opinion, what can Carolina on the defensive side of the ball do to maybe just bring some semblance of holding enough of it together to get some of these wins? Because let's be honest about the ACC. I should add this context. You look at the schedule, and there's no games that are like, oh, that's an obvious win. There's no games that are like, that's an obvious loss, because you don't have Miami upcoming. You don't have Clemson upcoming. It's just a bunch of like, ACC teams. So how do you do it?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think with Kaimon Rucker back, it's going to unlock so much more with their pass rush and with their run defense. I think the run defense has actually been okay this year. That's really the one area I would say has been okay, is that they are at least average, nation average in run D this year. And they're a little above average in tackling. They're a pretty solid tackling team as well. But just pass rush and coverage is not there. And when you have an elite pass rusher like Kaimon Rucker, who I thought was a top 5 edge defender in the country entering the year, you add him back, that helps your pass rush out a lot. And also, not only that, it helps out your coverage a lot as well. Because if you're getting to the quarterback quicker, they don't have as much time to stand back there. Your defensive backs have less time to get beat, right? So that's a really, really good thing for the coverage unit as well. That's why the coverage and pass rush go together so well, is that you need both of them to work. Not just one, helping out the other. But I think the pass rush will help out the coverage if they do that. And like you said, they've had some solid players in that secondary this year. I mean, even though they're 101st in coverage grade, which is not good on paper, Elijah Huzzie has played well this year. I think Marcus Allen has shown some good things this year as well. The issue in coverage for me, at least, is the safeties. I think the safeties in Tavius Lane and Jakeem Harris have really struggled this year. So I do place a lot of the coverage blame, at least on them, because I do think they have some good players at corner. It's just that safety is where they're kind of lacking right now. So that's where I think the issue is. But if you can get an elite pass rusher like Kaimon Rucker playing like he's been the last 2 years, then all of a sudden that can help out those safeties and that can help out that coverage unit that much more. But they do need Kaimon Rucker to be back, and not only healthy, but back to the elite player that he was, for the last 2 years or so.
All right, North Carolina started off 3-0 this season, now on a 4-game losing streak since then, plus the very confusing Mack Brown locker room interview where everyone thought he resigned or retired or quit or something like that. Turned out it was just locker room talk and everyone was confused. But the question is the writing on the wall? Is this the last year of Mack Brown? And if so, where do the Tar Heels go from here? We'll get into that and get Max's opinion on it coming up in just a second. Right after I tell you about FanDuel. Hey, NFL fans, you can start the season with a big return on FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook. So when you get a hunch in the middle of the game, you can check out the latest stats, view live play-by-play, and so much more on the same page where you place your bets. You'll get started with $200 in bonus bets guaranteed when you place your first $5 bet. How about some ACC regular champion odds? These odds might be changing based on some news we got on Thursday. But right now, Duke sits at plus 135, Carolina next at plus 370, followed by Wake at plus 1,000, Clemson plus 1,100, and then Virginia and Louisville tied at plus 1,500. I feel like maybe Virginia was like plus 1,400 and slid back after the Tony Bennett news. Curious to see how that adjusts based on once the markets really start to reckon with what's going on in Charlottesville there. So if you want to get in on any of that action, go check it all out at FanDuel.com. It's America's #1 sportsbook. Isaac Shade, Max Chadwick from PFF here with you on a Friday, going into an open week. So we don't have any game to set up. And so, Max, what I want to get to wrap up today is the Mack Brown of it all. And it's such a difficult thing to balance, because this is one of the greatest human beings in the sport of college football, one of only 3 active coaches to have a national championship to his name. Man, speaking of which, Texas looks really good. Glad they got Quinn Ewers back. That's great news. My wife is a Longhorn, so I'll give that a little horns up for you. But man, Mack Brown is just a gem of a human. You saw it this week with the news of the unfortunate passing of Tylee Kraft, Carolina football player, and just the way that Coach Brown is so connected to these players and their families. Like, that is somebody I would want my son to play for. But at some point, unfortunately, wins and losses kind of start to add up on both sides of that ledger. Are we at the point, Max, where you think at the end of this year, it might be just time for Mack Brown and AD Bubba Cunningham to kind of mutually agree that this is the end, or would you keep writing it out?
First of all, like all my prayers go to Tylee Kraft's family for what has been one of the biggest tragedies, obviously, in college football this year. It was very, very sad, and it was cool to see Carolina really rally behind that. But obviously, a big tragedy there. But yeah, Mack Brown. To answer your question, though, he's the oldest coach in college football right now. Right, he's 73 years old. He's done a lot for the sport. And we actually were very fortunate this offseason to interview Coach Brown. And like you said, he's one of the best characters in college football. I mean, he really was one of the best interviews we've had. And, sometimes with those older coaches, I've interviewed plenty of them before. Sometimes I'm just like sick of doing media, right? There's a lot of times where like, okay, I want to answer these guys' questions. Like this guy, what does he know? Like all that. Mack was super cool with us. And that was something I'll always treasure as a guy who grew up watching Mack Brown, right? So it's super cool to be able to interview him. And it was super cool for him to be that awesome as well. I think he kind of tipped his hand a little bit though after that loss to James Madison when he was saying, if we're going to compete like this, I'm not going to be here anymore, right? I think he's already, I don't want to say got one foot out the door, but I think he really is contemplating retirement right now, and it makes sense. Like he's been in the game for so long. Like I said, he is the oldest coach in college football by like 5 years as well. And there's some old coaches in college football, right? So, but Coach Brown, it's just it doesn't look great this year. It's not like they have a Drake Maye that's worth sticking around for. It's not like they have a Sam Howell that's worth sticking around for. You have a lot of your star players on the way out as well, and Omarion Hampton probably, and Kaimon Rucker as well. And then this year, it looks like a lost season. It looks like Carolina's probably going to go like 5-7. I probably predict for them to finish out the year and not make a bowl game. So, yeah, I would imagine this is the last year for Mack Brown. I wish it was a bigger send-off than this, but that James Madison, that quote after the James Madison game was very telling in my opinion. It just sounded like he was ready to step aside, and he's going to finish out the year because that's not who he is. He's not a quitter. He's not going to just retire in the middle of the season. But I do expect him at least to probably call it a career after the season.
Man, and what a career it will have been, but very well deserved for he and Miss Sally to ride off into the sunset. And you're so spot on with the media side of it there, Max, because and clearly all the time he spent at ESPN in the media has given him such great appreciation for what you and I do, right? And I'm so grateful for that. And he, like without fail, that is who he is. But I think it's also our job in the media to then say, okay, so what's next? Because, Carolina is in the ACC. Carolina is not, that doesn't have SEC or Big Ten money. Carolina is not historically one of like the brands in football like it is in basketball. And so are you looking for maybe a young coordinator? Are you looking for a young head coach? Do you think there's a world in which you can get an established head coach? Where if you're Bubba Cunningham and you're performing this national search for a new coach, if Coach Brown is out, where are you going?
Great question. I would look at, there's two ways I think you can go, because I don't think you're convincing a good Power 4 coach to leave their program for North Carolina. I think you make a good point there. I think obviously there's two ways you can go. That you can go the coordinator route. You could go after one of the top coordinators in the sport, like say an Andy Kotelnicki from Penn State. I think it's really been a revelation for the Nittany Lions this year. Their offense looks a lot better than what it did last year, with basically the same, if not worse, personnel than last year, right? So that's really impressive. So Andy Kotelnicki is a name that I think is going to be a hot name in coaching circles. Will Stein, the offensive coordinator from Oregon, has been outstanding there as well. So there's a couple coordinators. And then, or you could look at the group of 5 level and look at the top head coaches in the group of 5 as next Carolina coach. And I know one of them, Jamie Chadwell, the head coach for Liberty. He's got ties to the Carolinas, right? He was the head coach of Coastal Carolina for a while before going to Liberty. He's kind of got ties to that whole area, right? So that would be a really good hire, I think, for North Carolina. So I think Jamie Chadwell from Liberty could be an option. There's a lot of programs I think that you can go after. And look at Indiana, right? Indiana went 3-9 last year. They hired a great group of 5 coach in Curt Cignetti coming from James Madison. And all of a sudden they go from 3-9, they're 6-0 right now, and they have legitimate playoff aspirations this year, right? So I think North Carolina is probably looking at that as maybe a blueprint if Mack Brown does call it a career after this year. So yeah, I think there's definitely options out there, right? There are definitely options for them to go after a good group of 5 head coach and try to get them to come to their program. So yeah, I would say Jamie Chadwell might be the top of my list if I'm North Carolina. Or if you want to look for a coordinator, maybe a guy like Andy Kotelnicki or Will Stein, or maybe some other guys that I haven't thought about yet. But that'd probably be the way too. I don't know if they're not going to get a Power 4 head coach to leave their program. I would expect them to go the group of 5 head coach route or a Power 4 coordinator route, in my opinion.
All right. Good word, Max. Thank you so much for your insight. It's just great to have you, someone who sees the national scene of college football, that's going to have some of those insights. Bring that to us here as the Tar Heel fans. So, folks, big thanks to Max for joining us today. As a reminder, PFF has got you covered all season long with the best data tools and analysis in the game. So go check out PFF Plus today for less than $10 a month. Max, best of luck the rest of the season. We talked about it off air, but I want to just congratulate you on air, man. So cool, all the great stuff you're getting to do, going on Feinbaum every Monday. Folks, make sure you check out Max's spots there as he continues his ascension through football media, man. All of us are in this together, and we just all want to root for each other and see great things. So, brother, best to you as you carry on.
No, dude, that really means the world, honestly. And keep killing this show, man. I got to tell you, after the James Madison game, you're actually one of the first shows I wanted to tune into to see what you had to say about that game, right? So you're killing it with this show, dude. And I'm always very honored whenever you want to have me on. So I appreciate having me on again.
Thanks so much, Max. Folks, if you're not tuned into our show, make sure you subscribe on video and audio so you don't miss a second of Locked On Tar Heels. If you're not part of our Locked On Tar Heels Discord, which has literally been popping off with notifications as Max and I have been sitting here talking, Carolina fans are very upbeat about what happened on Tuesday night at Memphis in the FedEx Forum. Man, make sure you join that. The link is in the show notes, and it's free to join. If you want to go next level with this thing, join the Locked On Tar Heels Insider, where you can connect with me directly one-on-one. You get free access as part of that to all my stats, data, my own Carolina record book, and all of that great stuff, man. Just 2-week free trial, and it's only $5 a month after that. A great way to help support our show. All right, gang, you know the drill. It's always a great day to be a Tar Heel. We'll talk again on Monday. Hope you have a great weekend, but until then, peace.